Alright guys, Quantum here, and in this video we're going to be taking a look at the mirror match between Ruby Amethyst while being on the draw. So this was a match that was recorded a few days ago, and the deck lists, like I mentioned in my deck profile video, which is likely linked in the description, has been evolving over time. I talked about some tech options in that video where I said there's going to be a locationless version of this deck that's going to have success, and I believe the winner of SGC Philly played a locationless version of Ruby Amethyst and won the game. Because if you've playtested this matchup online, you know that playing those locations in this mirror match is actually a hindrance, because you're just asking for it to get Maui, you lose tempo, the Maui takes it out for free and takes no damage, and it just feels really bad. You're basically a step behind, and it could be a factor in you losing the game. In this matchup though, you can see that my opponent is playing fairly nicely on curve here. They got the Madam Mim Fox established, and we're debating if we want to quest with this Cusco. We end up inking our Fox in order to value the card draw, because even in set 2, which was probably a mistake at the time, but it seems to be the game plan at least right now in set 3, the card draw in this mirror match is what wins you the game. And unfortunately my opponent has the better option in the Rabbit, and they opt to trade into the, well, not trade, but take out my Cusco with their Fox, which is good value for them because it does represent board advantage, and the Fox essentially goes 2 for 1, but not really, because Cusco draws you a card. The important thing here to note is that the opponent is not running away with the lore count. Thankfully, I'm able to draw into my own rabbits, and this is where the mirror match becomes a battle of attrition, and being on the draw in the mirror match is not as much of a detriment as it was in set 2, where in set 2 being on the draw was a significant disadvantage, because whoever established the Minnie Mouse Surfer first, especially if you didn't have an answer, which you probably didn't on the first couple of turns, they would just win the game from there. Now though, the game being more of a battle of attrition, the rabbits are very important, making sure that you have a pretty decent sized hand to deal with many different threats hitting the board is kind of the way you need to go, because by the time you get to turns like 10, 11, and 12, you're going to find that your resources are dwindling quite a bit, usually, if you and your opponent are on similar skill levels. So you can see here in the board state, both on 5 ink, we are both playing the Rabbits and the Mauis. The issue is, though, I have this Jim Hawkins and this Queen's Castle in my hand that are, or should be, pretty much just ink at this point, because the Maui on board, even though they don't have a fishhook yet, does represent free value for them in taking out that location. So the hand that I have here isn't necessarily the worst. I do have a goat, I have the location, the fishhook, the opponent plays their fishhook finally, and I have 2 uninkables, well, 3 and another rabbit, but the Be Prepared and the Medusa. Now my rabbit does get taken out there, and the opponent is, essentially still ahead. And what's funny is they're opting to play the Minnie Mouse and the Yzma package. And honestly, I don't know if I talked about it in my deck profile video, but I had them, if you guys watched that video, because I did it like a real life profile, I had a stack of cards that I was like, you can tech this in instead of this. I don't know if I covered the Yzma. I know I covered the Minnie Mouse, but if I was going to cut the gym and the locations, I would probably put in the Yzmas, because they do represent great value in putting the bounce cards back into your deck that you can draw later, as well as giving you a draw too. And with Maui's fishhook, giving Yzma evasive, it's very hard for your opponent to out without a fishhook and Maui of their own. But Yzma represents an on-play value, right? Draw 2, and like I said, in the mirror match, that value is really, really nice, because you're able to just draw more cards that way, right? With Yzma, you rarely would use it on your opponent's threat, but I guess that is technically an option as well. So in this board state, yes, the opponent does have the established Minnie Mouse, which is a problem. Their Maui isn't really doing anything except singing there, which is fine. We do have a larger hand than them, and our board state isn't necessarily the worst. As soon as this Minnie Mouse quests, and this is why I opted to establish the snake here, I can drop my own fishhook, give it evasive, and take out the Minnie Mouse. And this is why Minnie Mouse is a little underwhelming. It does get the opponent a one-time 2 lore advantage, but they kind of just lose board presence here. The issue is, again, being on the play, they are able to continue to quest in an advantageous position here. I'm going to opt to sing Friends with the Rabbit instead of questing with it, because I just want better ink here. I ink a Minnie Mouse and pass. You can see some of the other value that Yzma provides here. In the damaged Maui that took out 2 of my cards, they were able to put it back into the deck, which makes it even more of a detriment for me to play my locations, because I'm like, well, I didn't even out 1 Maui. Now they got 4 again. They probably have another one in hand. Like, it's just not great. So the opponent doubles up on the Yzma value, and this is just some of the tremendous advantage you can get. I do still have 2 rabbits in rotation here, but and I did out one of the opponents, but you have Yzma to draw 4 right here, right? Like it's really, really good. So Yzma is definitely a great tech option. Now my opponent wasn't on the spellbook tech, because like I said, this match was a couple of days before I released, or anybody I think really was talking about spellbook. Again, if you watch my live stream at my locals, which is on my channel, you know that I was playing spellbook there, because I already realized the value of putting this card back into the Ruby Amethyst matchup. So I imagine by now, the time of me dropping this video, most people are back on it. But I really hope that if you're watching this video, you really see the variation. And again, I talked about this in that deck profile. I said there's going to be different variants of this deck that will range in success. There's going to be builds that are built for the mirror that have better success there. And I think those are the locationless versions of this deck. And honestly, just in general, the location for me, after some testing, it does feel a little overwhelming because a lot of people are taking against it. The only thing I will say is into the steel matchups, I actually do prefer to keep the locations if I could, just because I'd rather them use Rise of the Titans and stuff on the location rather than Rise of the Titans, my Spellbook, or my Maui's Fishhook. And I know Maui's Fishhook doesn't represent the most value in the mirror, in steel matchups, but it does still allow you to make some positive trades where you otherwise wouldn't. So normally, while the Fishhook would be ink because there are better value cards that you would want to play, there is still some merit, especially if you can get rid of the Rise of the Titans. Like if they just ink it or they use it on the location, like it's actually decent because your items are safe because people don't play Benja anymore. So here you can see my opponent now kind of realizes that they have to race me. My Maui was able to take out the Yzma, which was good value for me to finally get that out of rotation. The amount of Medusa in the mirror is really underwhelming as well. But you know, you play them. So again, in my deck list, I was only playing 2, so the impact is minimized for me, at least in my opinion. This Maui though is going to trade into the Madame Medusa here, and my Maui doesn't really get all that much value, even though it took out the Yzma and the Madame Medusa. And I think this was the Maui I bounced back to hand, right? But like each of those cards technically did something when they were played, so using my Maui to out them both doesn't really feel the greatest. Like I have to deal with them because they're bigger bodies that that quest, but in the end, like it doesn't seem that great because look at the difference in card advantage, right? I don't really have an edge on my opponent, where that's really what you want your Maui to do, is to go 2 for 1 in a positive sense. But yeah, you can see that we do have a pretty healthy board state, and I'm kind of playing around the be prepared. I know my opponent definitely has one. They know that I definitely have one. But by playing rabbits and goats, like, do you really want to be prepared that board? They leave my rabbit up, opting to take out my goat, and unfortunately I still don't have a way to bounce my rabbit, so I'm just going to double quest and drop the Be Prepared now in this state. Yes, it gives the opponent a draw. Yes, it gives them a lore, but I just don't want them continuing to quest, and outing one of the Mauis does feel okay, I guess, here. They're on 5 cards, and I still have to worry about, like, are they going to play another Maui? I'm looking at their discard, and they've played 1, right? Because, again, they Yzma back the other one. And I'm like, yeah, it's just, if I play that gym in that location, it's just going to get Maui fish hooked, right? So I'm just going to play out the Minnie Mouse after questing with the spellbook, and I'm just keeping the lore pressure on my opponent. They have to basically answer these 1-drops, and you can see here, like, this is how desperate they are. They're just going to drop the Maleficent Dragon, which is not necessarily the worst, considering that, it's a big body that quests for 2. So, and this is weird, this play here, you might be thinking, like, Quantum, what are you doing? Why are you playing this location now? Because I don't want them to quest with that Maleficent. So I'm like, please use your Maleficent to throw it into my my location and don't have a Maui. But we'll see what happens here. The Jim Hawkins also just represents 2 lore on board, so it kind of matches the Maleficent, because at this point in the game, yeah, we're both on 14 lore. I did gain a little bit of the lore advantage thanks to that spellbook, but I do have to worry about the opponent just kind of putting too much pressure on board. They do exude a lot of resources in order to deal with the Jim Hawkins location, which I guess is the one benefit here, right? They had to spend a Dragonfire and a Maui. They quest with the Maleficent, and I end up preparing the board and then drop a follow-up Rafiki. And you can just see the pressure that Spellbook is putting on this opponent, right? Because we're constantly outing each other's boards, the Spellbook is just getting me 1 is a huge deal. The top deck Maleficent here is actually really nice. It saves me from using my Be Prepared. And you can see, like I mentioned, these 2 Madame Medusas are kind of dead in my hand here. We're both on 4 cards, and just like I said, like around turn 10, 11, 12, we're both kind of running out of resources at this point, and now we're just trying to put anything on board that can quest. this is where the Madame Medusa can come in handy, believe it or not, right? So where my opponent had the Maleficent Dragon, my Minnie Mouse, I can Madame Medusa, cost less, and I can continue to spellbook. So at this point, my opponent kind of knows that I've gotten too far from them. Like, they do have a goat and a bounce, which is really strong. And I technically don't have game next turn, but my opponent is going to end up conceding here because I think they just realize, yeah, there's no way for them to really close out the game from where they're at compared to me. So hopefully this was helpful. If you enjoyed this video, let me know. I will be posting an updated deck list because I think I would prefer the locationless version myself, but we'll wait and see. Thank you again for watching. If you made it this far, Quantum is out.